Hello everyone and welcome back to Towergate. It is Towergate Day, number 1044, 1044, Saturday, February the 15th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Absolutely incredible news day yesterday. Many big stories dropping, including a lot to finally, after several weeks of just really not a lot to talk about regarding the Durham investigation. Just a really big day of stories dropping about John Durham. So obviously things are heating up. There's a lot going on. Trying to sort through all this and make sense of it. We'll do the best we can, but I'm not sure anyone can right now. There's just too much chaos around everything, and just too much information to process it. So we'll go through the stories and try to do the best we can at figuring out what may be going on here. So let's start with the first thing. Of course, yesterday we had the big headline that came out saying that the Department of Justice will not charge Andy McCabe. They're not going to charge Andy McCabe. Now, before everyone gets too bent out of shape about this, keep in mind, this is the probe that was a result of Inspector General Huckleberry Horowitz referring McCabe for lying to the FBI and that type of thing. And, of course, is being part of releasing this information to Devlin Barrett and writing those stories. That's what this is isolated to. This has nothing to do with the Durham investigation or anything surrounding that. This is simply this referral that was done by Horowitz because of what was discovered and what he produced in the Horowitz report about McCabe, lying under oath. So this is a lot like what we saw with Comey a couple of months ago, where they decided not to move forward with Comey on, whether or not he leaked classified information. So I see this as pretty much the same thing. And I don't know, I don't necessarily think this is good. I think he should have been prosecuted. But I think there's something bigger going on here. And it should also be noted that if you look at the statement that came out, they said that we are not going to charge McCabe, and we consider the case closed at this time. At this time. So, I don't read a lot into this other than the fact that I would say go ahead and charge him with lying under oath. And you can still charge him with the other crimes when Durham gets through with his investigation. So I am disappointed on that fact, but keep in mind, this is not a total exoneration of McCabe and his other activities as it relates to the Durham investigation. This is something separate. So while it is disappointing, and again, it's another piece of evidence that if you're in the FBI, if you're a Democrat, if you hate Trump, you can lie, you can obstruct justice, you can destroy evidence, you can do all these things, and you will walk scot-free. But if you have any association with Trump, support Trump in any way, serve under Trump and his administration, if you even, violate a crosswalk, you'll be looking at years in jail. So it's not fair, and it is frustrating. It continues to frustrate everyone, including me. And the only thing we can do is continue to watch and see what Barr and Durham do, and see if there will be any accountability there. As most of you know, I believe that there has to be. I don't really look at this as like there's much of an option. I just don't think that they can let it ride, and I don't think Trump's going to let it slide either. We know too much. But then again, here we have McCabe. We know he lied. He's admitted to that. The IG said he did it. He referred him criminally, but they're going to let him off the hook. And we had another story yesterday that Jesse Liu was going to charge McCabe, and somebody put the kibosh on it. I don't know who that would be. But anyway, that's the story, and I don't know what more you can read into it other than that. It's very frustrating. Michael Avenatti, found guilty of all charges. I believe this, now there's two cases. This is the one case, of which there were three primary charges, which included extortion and wire fraud. Found guilty on all charges. he's looking at about 42 years in jail, which is pretty much a life sentence for him. So there you go. Michael Avenatti found guilty. So at least you can say somebody on the left actually got the treatment, and there's still another case out there. And when you put the two together, this guy is going to jail for a long time. He's crooked, as crooked as he can be. And it's just funny to think that there were so many on the left, CNN, MSNBC, putting this guy on TV over and over again, even talking about him being a possible challenger to Trump in 2020. What a joke. But there you go, Avenatti. So there is some justice as Avenatti, and this was in Los Angeles. So Avenatti, Avenatti must have made some enemies on the Democratic side as well. That's what you can take from that. Another breaking story yesterday, Lindsey Graham has written his letter to A.G. Barr, wanting him to make witnesses available. And I've seen the list of witnesses. I'm sure most of you have too. It's the who's who of everybody involved in the FISA process, and quite a few of those people also involved in Crossfire Hurricane. A lot of people mentioned the Horowitz report. I don't know if these are all open hearings, if they're going to be closed hearings. I really don't know. But there you go. Lindsey Graham requesting Barr make these witnesses available. And, of course, they include McCabe, Comey, Yates, Rodenstein. Of course, they talk about case agent number 1. That would be Pientka, which is a guy that everybody wants to hear from. He's the guy that seems to be getting protected the most. And he was involved in everything. From the Clinton investigation to the Mueller, the dossier, the whole 9 yards. Christopher Steele, everything. He's involved in everything. So whether or not this is a head fake, whether or not this is a cover-up, or whether this is an assist with Attorney General Barr, I don't know. Because to me, watching the Senate over the years, the Senate Judiciary and Intelligence Committees, to me appear to be like the gatekeepers. Whenever there's a big scandal by government bureaucrats, crooked politicians, people like that, and the audience, the public is clamoring for an investigation, this is where you go. They have the investigation, and then nothing ever comes of it. They call some witnesses, they grill a few people, run them over the coals, put on a hell of a good show, and nothing comes out of it. No one ever held accountable. So I don't know if this is what is going on or if it's something else. But we do know that that Attorney General Barr and Graham meet almost every week. What we see from Lindsey Graham in public comments is that he's talking to Barr about, getting to the bottom of the FISA warrants and the spying on Trump campaign and all this sort of thing. Now, if this is legitimate and Lindsey Graham is actually going into this with the intention of doing the right thing, which is exposing the crimes and getting these people up in front of the Senate, preferably in an open hearing where we can all watch, and asking them some tough questions, then, of course, that's all good. Now, because Barr and Lindsey Graham do meet just about every week on this issue, it is possible that, and the timing here is important. We've been complaining because Lindsey Graham has been talking, but never actually doing it. But now he actually appears to be doing it. So I think the timing here is important, because what Attorney General Barr and John Durham and President Trump need is as much disclosure to the American public about what happened as is possible. The more that they can sort of wet people's palate, and the more that they can get out before Durham and Barr do their thing, the better for Barr, Durham, and Trump. To sort of warm people up to the idea that guess what's coming. Just like the Horowitz report was kind of a warm-up for, hey, look at all the stuff that's laid out in the IG report. A lot of problems here. To kind of sort of prepare the field. And then, of course, here we have Lindsey Graham. He's going to go ahead and have these hearings now, which could take, what, a month, whatever. And then sometime, maybe a month or so after that, we expect we'll be seeing something from Durham. So this could be a coordinated plan with Lindsey Graham and Attorney General Barr to go ahead and get people comfortable with the idea that a lot of these individuals who will be called in front of the committee regarding FISA, the dossier, the Spygate, spying on Trump, whatever, getting these people out there and getting some good soundbite material from the Q&A with them in the Senate could spark enough interest that there would be a lot of media commentary, get people talking about it, get people comfortable with the fact that we have these high-level DOJ, FBI officials that were involved in some things they shouldn't have been involved in, doing some things they shouldn't have been doing, certainly unethical, violations of policy, likely illegal, all these sorts of things. So this could be a Barr, Lindsey Graham coordinated rollout to, again, set the stage. Because, as I've been saying for about 2 weeks, it appears that Barr is setting the stage for something. What that is, we're not exactly sure. I believe it's to take down the coup plotters. Whether or not you get them all, whether or not, how that all turns out, I'm not exactly sure. But I'm pretty sure that it's going to be very hard for Durham to have done this entire investigation and then to step up to the podium and say, well, I really didn't find anything I could charge anybody with. I just don't think that that's possible. So I'm not really sure if this is a head fake or the real thing, and we're only going to know by continuing to follow the story to its conclusion. We can only speculate, and we all have our own individual sort of feelings about this. At this point, for me, it's gut instinct. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of things going on. And it means something. It means something, and it's probably not good for the deep state coup plotters. Because they wouldn't continue to stir up all this stuff if they wanted to make it go away. This stuff's being stirred up. It's keeping it in the news cycle. It's keeping people talking about it. It's keeping people asking questions. And that would not be something that they would want to do if they were trying to make everything go away. It looks to me like in the past several weeks, a lot of things are happening that are happening to prepare all of us and the public for something coming down the pike really big. And I think that that means Durham's investigation coming to a completion and him laying charges on those he's found to have violated the law. That's what it tells me. But let's keep watching just to be sure. We also have the story yesterday that Attorney General Barr has now appointed an outside prosecutor to review the Michael Flynn case, as well as other cases. They don't name what those other cases are, but I think what they're talking about is the other cases that came out of the Mueller witch hunt. With these obviously whack job prosecutors, anti-Trump prosecutors who went after Papadopoulos, Flynn, Stone, Manafort, the whole nine yards. And so I think it's not just that they're going to be looking at the Flynn case. I think that he's got this group of outside prosecutors that he wants to review all of these cases because I think he sees a problem here. And I think he wants to get it out of Main Justice because all of these prosecutors are from other places outside D.C. and outside Main Justice. I think the one that, if I remember correctly, the prosecutor who he's put on the Flynn thing is from Georgia. So I imagine he's going to go out into the country outside of Washington, D.C., find some individual prosecutors he thinks he can trust, and he's going to let them do an overview or evaluate all of these cases. Again, the only one they specifically name is the Flynn case. But I think if you read the article, he's referring to all these cases that were brought during the Mueller witch hunt. So we'll have to see how that goes out. This could also just be another delay tactic by Barr. Barr could say, well, once the Durham thing drops and this whole thing blows up and it's all exposed, Trump's going to be pardoning all these people anyway. who have already been prosecuted. And in the case of Flynn, there's issues. Now we have issues in the Stone case. He's calling for a new trial. Obviously, we have at least one, and it appears more than one, tainted juror. I think the whole thing is so sloppy and messy that Barr just wants to have some other prosecutors look into these cases outside of D.C. and try to bring some sort of fairness. Could also be, again, a delay tactic to buy some time for Durham, because once Durham does his thing, obviously this entire coup plot will be unveiled, and Trump will be likely pardoning or commuting sentences of a lot of these people. And so this could be just something to buy some time. But either way, I think it's a good move by Barr. I think as much as possible, he has to. I think he realizes how politicized everything is inside the Beltway in D.C. I think he's finding out that if he's going to get any type of unbiased or fair look at any of these cases, he is going to have to get outside of the District of Columbia. He's going to have to get out into some states outside the Beltway area, and he's going to have to get some prosecutors who are not entangled with all these players who all know each other. And I think that that's probably what's going on here. I think it's a very good move by Barr, and we'll continue to watch these as well. Matthew Whitaker, he had a pretty interesting interview. He's being interviewed, and he says that he believes that Barr and Trump may have been set up by these four prosecutors from the Mueller team involved in the Stone and Flynn case. The idea, what he's saying, is that he thinks that these prosecutors going for 8-9 year sentence on Stone, that they did that on purpose to provoke a response they knew would come from Trump and possibly likely from Barr. That they had this all planned out, that they were going to come into this thing and that they were going to ask for this big sentence for Stone, knowing good and well it would trigger Trump, would certainly cause Barr to have to act. Then they resign in protest. Again, is some sort of a play to make it look like Trump is, that Barr is working as Trump's personal attorney, going after his political enemies. This is the narrative that they've been trying to build. They'll continue to build this. And so we can see what's going on here. There's a lot of chaos, and what appears to me to be going on here, there appears to be kind of a civil war going on within the Department of Justice. And Barr is finding himself at the center of it because he's the head of the Department of Justice. You have these Obama holdovers. You have the Mueller prosecutor holdovers still with these lingering cases. You have people within the DOJ, the FBI, even the oversight, the Inspector General. I think Barr is in a situation where he doesn't really know who he's dealing with, who the good guys and the bad guys are. He's kind of handcuffed because if he gets too personally involved, then he plays right into the narrative. So the narrative is what they're trying to sell, and that is so that when Durham brings the indictments, they have this narrative already in place, and that everything that Barr and Durham do, and Trump, to bring the criminals to justice, feeds into the narrative. That Barr is just acting as Trump's personal hitman to go after Trump's political enemies. They've created this narrative, and now they want to do everything they can to provide examples that that is the case, so that when the big hit comes from Durham, it plays right into the narrative that they've already set in place and that the media has pounded over and over and over again. So it looks like they can say, see, we told you. This is the evidence, just as we've been telling you. And then they'll cite all these examples, and this will be one of them. So Barr clearly understands there's a civil war. He knows that his man Durham is going to likely indict a lot of crooked people in the DOJ, the FBI, and particularly in the intelligence community, would be Brennan and Clapper. He knows that the tactic that's being used against him is to create this narrative, and I think he's trying to find a way out of it. And I think it's tricky business right now for Attorney General Barr. He's kind of in a minefield, you might say, tap dancing through a minefield, trying to figure out exactly how to go about doing this, how to bring the criminals to justice without falling into the pre-designed narrative that when he does it will look like he's doing exactly what they said he was doing. And so I think that there's kind of a civil war, it's a chess match, and it's all going on within the Department of Justice. So Barr is in a very tricky position right now. I'm not happy with the comments he made yesterday, but I still feel in my gut that he is a straight shooter. I kind of understand his comments, but I guess like I said yesterday, the way I look at it, yeah, it probably makes Barr's job a little tougher when Trump tweets out things like that. But the fact of the matter is, what Trump is talking about are those people who work in the very Department of Justice and FBI that Barr is the head of. And so my feelings are, if you don't like what Trump's tweeting, it's the people that work for you, Mr. Barr, that are the problem, not the president. And that was my only takeoff from yesterday. I still have a pretty high degree of confidence that Barr is a straight shooter and that Durham is going to get to the bottom of things. Well, we have other speculations now following on that same point. We have, and this is coming out of the left-wing media as well, that Barr and Trump did a good cop, bad cop routine with this deal that Barr comes out and says, hey, you know, Trump's making my job much more difficult with these tweets, and I wish he wouldn't tweet about ongoing cases. And then Trump comes out and says, well, you know, Barr's entitled to his opinion. That's just fine. I'm not bothered by it at all. I think he's a great attorney general. I have 100% confidence in him. No problem with me. No problem here. So a lot of people on the left are thinking, oh, this was a good cop, bad cop routine by Trump and Barr to try to hedge the narrative that Barr is working as Trump's personal, you know, prosecutor going after Trump's enemies. And that some people think that this is just something that Barr and Trump put together to try to push back on that narrative. I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I mean, it's possible, but that's not Barr's style. That's not how Barr would do this. So I don't believe that. And again, it's coming from the left. So when you see something like that, they have this narrative going, and that would have certainly thrown a wrench into the narrative. So the natural response is, oh, well, that's just a good cop, bad cop routine to try to push back on our narrative. So again, this is why I say what I see going on here is kind of a civil war within the Department of Justice. That's what it looks like to me. And we know whose side the media is on. Now, getting over to a little bit of election politics, a very, I thought, pretty important story that broke yesterday was that, of course, Joe Biden, quid pro quo Joe, was up in New York City for a big major fundraiser with 250 of the top Wall Street executives. And this was a fundraiser. And this had been planned weeks and weeks in advance. So this is not something that just happened. This was planned weeks and weeks in advance. But there's a very interesting backstory here that's being talked about. Apparently, Biden goes to this fundraiser in New York City with these top 250 big donors, which had been planned. This had been a fundraiser that had been planned weeks ago. But apparently, at this fundraiser, Biden was told by someone who represents all these money people that, hey, you know what? We're going to come through with this money because we promised you we would. We promised we would have this fundraiser. And it's over $1 million that they raised. Well over $1 million. And apparently they told Joe Biden, though, they let him know, this is it. Take this money. Give it your best shot. But if you do not have a good showing in South Carolina, a really strong showing in South Carolina, we're going to have to cut you loose. This is a lot of Biden's money that's coming from the corporate class in the Democratic Party, the Wall Street big donors. These are the big donors that really bring in the big money. And these are the guys you got to have on your side. If you don't have these guys on your side, you can't compete unless you're a billionaire. So apparently yesterday, the big billionaires in New York told Biden, here it is, here's the money. You got to have a strong show in South Carolina, or we got to let you go. Sorry, Joe. Well, Biden's not going to do that well in South Carolina. I mean to tell you, he can spend as much money as he wants. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but the main reason is, now at this point, is that Biden's entire appeal up to this point had been that he was the best one that had the best shot of beating Trump. But now that's blown away. That's gone, because he finished fourth in New Hampshire, or fourth in Iowa and fifth in New Hampshire. So that's gone. That's what he was riding on, and it's all gone. So that being the most weighty factor in Biden having a strong showing is gone. So in South Carolina, I don't think he's going to win South Carolina. A strong showing, I'm not sure what that would be, but I would think he would have to either have to win or have a strong second place finish, or that's it for quid pro quo Joe. And we know he's going to get his ass reamed down in Nevada, because we've already seen the poll numbers. Right now, Bernie's sitting at 25%. Even Steyer. I mean, Biden is not even in the top 5 right now showing in Nevada. He's not even in the top 5. He can't have a worse than 5th place finish in Nevada, even if he does well in South Carolina. I mean, it's over for Joe Biden, okay? It was over for him a long time ago, but it's really over for him now. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about gets very involved. It's going to have to be, most of the information I'm going to give you about this will be in Sunday's video, because it's a lot to go through, and I'm still going through it, to be honest with you. But here's the main thing we need to know to set you up for what we're going to talk about on Sunday, which is a deep dive into the most recent things we've learned, and we have learned some new things, and it comes from the usual sources, the New York Times. So as you know, the New York Times in the last 3 weeks have now written their second major hit piece on Durham. And the hit piece is basically to say that it's unprecedented what Durham is doing, looking into the intelligence community, questioning their motives, questioning their activities as it relates to the Russia investigation. So they did about 3 weeks ago, they had a story just like this. Then a bunch of other media outlets picked up on it, wrote their own stories. The same thing is happening here. Here we are, 3 weeks down the road, another big New York Times story. And again, in each of these New York Times stories, we learn things about the Durham investigation we did not know. And this one, we learned some really, really bombshell stuff that shows you exactly how deep Durham is going. And what's particularly, I thought, crazy that they tell you in this New York Times story is they let us know that, yes, something we've been talking about here on Towergate, will Durham stop at the DNC hack? Will he stop at that and not really go look into that? We find out from this New York Times story, no. That's exactly where he is going. That's exactly where he is going. We learned from this New York Times article that Durham's investigators have interviewed CrowdStrike, the analyst, and their supervisors. They've interviewed Uncle Bob the Executioner and people on the Mueller team, and much more. So here we have this piece. Again, it's likely sourced by people in the CIA, probably Brennan, friends of Brennan. And it's really an attempt to protect Brennan and Clapper and the intel community at large. It's a hit piece on Durham, because Durham at this point seems to have figured out, what he seems to have figured out is something that I suggested a long time ago, is that Brennan himself manufactured a lot of this evidence and pumped it into the FBI, and then kept them in the dark about the true sources of the information and where it was coming from. In other words, Brennan used the CIA to play the FBI. This appears to be where Durham is right now. And this is why we found out that he's really focused mostly on the intelligence community, not looking at the FBI so much anymore. That was all done by Horowitz. A lot of crimes in there, a lot of things that shouldn't have been done. There's some overlap with the FBI, with Peter's been stroking us, also being part of the CIA. But it appears now that Durham is focused really, really solidly on the intelligence side of things, and he's definitely looking at the origins of the Russian narrative, which starts with the hack of the DNC. Durham is looking at the hacking of the DNC. Whether or not he's going to interview Julian Assange, I don't know. But there's another person out there he could talk to, Dana Rohrabacher. Dana Rohrabacher went and talked to Julian Assange for 3 hours. He then came back to Washington and was trying to get a meeting with the president to tell him what he had learned. Rohrabacher did a couple of interviews and said, in no uncertain terms, that Julian Assange told him explicitly that it was not the Russians or any state actor that hacked the DNC. And Rohrabacher, I think, has more information than that. Durham may have interviewed Rohrabacher. Not 100% sure about that, but we know at this time that Durham's focus right now and what he seems to believe is two things. Number one, the intel community headed up by Brennan and Clapper manufactured evidence which they moved into the FBI. Whether certain individuals in the FBI and DOJ were aware and they were just playing along, or whether they were actually fooled, is what he's trying to nail down. So he definitely knows that for sure. But he's also looking at a cover-up, and the cover-up would have been managed at the top of the executive branch, Barack Hussein Obama. And he has requested records from the Obama Library archives, which are usually kept under seal for a certain amount of time, and you can't get to them. And a lot of times that's where presidents hide things that might come up in investigations. And in an effort to get his hands on that material, apparently some of the items that should have been present, that he was told were present in the Obama archives, he was then told they can't find them, which is apparently infuriated Durham, because he's not stupid. He knows these things are not lost. And that's why he believes now there's a cover-up. And it's being engineered, is being engineered, protecting Obama, the senior administration officials in the Obama administration. And they name names like Rice, Samantha Power, Obama himself. Orchestrating, not just then, but still orchestrating an effort to keep evidence away from Durham that he's looking for. And this, I guess, is why he believes he's also now investigating a major cover-up. And he's apparently very ticked off, to say the least. There's many more things and details to get to that were dug out of this story. So on Sunday, I'm just going to go through just the brief headlines. Unless it's really important, I'm not even going to talk about it, so that I can get to all of this information that we gleaned from the New York Times article, as well as some information coming from Real Clear Investigations, and also another source who I sometimes look at as well. So Sunday is going to be the deep dive on the latest from Durham, piggybacking off the things I just mentioned. You'll definitely want to tune in to Sunday's video. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you then. Bye.